It all started on a normal day. Suddenly, every human on Earth was turned to stone. Right before the end, Taiju Oki was hyping himself up. After 5 years of crushing on Yuzuriha, he was finally ready to tell her how he felt. Over in the science lab, Senku Ishigami was busy with his experiments. Senku offered him a love potion that he claimed would guarantee success. But Taiju poured out. He wasn't going to cheat his way into her heart. He headed off to meet her under the big camphor tree. Senku told his classmates that the potion was actually just gasoline he made from plastic caps. He knew Taiji was too honest to actually use it, though. Yuzuriha Ogawa was already there waiting for him. Taiji's heart was beating like crazy. She looked at him, waiting for whatever he had to say. Meanwhile, the guys back at the lab were busy placing bets on how fast he'd get rejected. Taiji finally gathered his courage. He'd been terrified of losing their friendship for 5 years, but today was the day. Just as he was about to speak, a weird light filled the sky. Everyone in the city stopped and looked up. A massive wave of green light swept across the entire planet. Taiju grabbed Yuzuriha and told her to hang onto the tree. The light hit them instantly. Taiju could feel his body hardening. Within seconds, he was completely encased in stone. It was happening everywhere. People were petrified mid-step, falling right where they stood. Cars careened off the road as the world ground to a halt. Up in the sky, a jet was cruising along. The pilots were turned to stone right in their seats. The plane came crashing down into a residential area. Civilization was over in an instant. Even the President of the United States couldn't escape it. One girl felt her consciousness slipping away. It felt like death was finally coming for her. Thousands of years passed in silence. The earth kept spinning, but humanity was frozen. Taiju's mind was still racing, though. He refused to let go. He kept telling himself to wake up, knowing if he lost focus for even a second, he'd fade away forever. He remembered that morning, before everything changed. A few students had found a weird stone bird on the school grounds. Taiju took a closer look at it. He actually picked the thing up and ran it to a veterinary clinic. He got there, but the place was still closed. Yuzuriha caught up to him and told him he was being a dummy. It was clearly just a sculpture. He felt like a total idiot for taking it so seriously. But then Yuzuriha showed him that she had found one, too. They were both going to be late for school now, but Taiju didn't care. As the moon rose, the world fell silent, leaving only the animals to roam the earth. Predators roam where humans once lived. Monkeys have turned the ruins of cities into their new home. But deep inside a stone shell, Taiju Oki is still conscious, wondering how much time has passed. He refuses to let his story end here. He still hasn't told Yuzuriha how he feels. Through sheer willpower, he fights to stay awake as weeks turn into months. Cities crumble into dust, but Taiju's spirit remains unbroken. Modern marvels fall into the sea, yet he won't let his mind fade. The years continue to slip by. Centuries turn into millennia, and the forest completely swallows the ruins of Tokyo. Taiju's goal never changes. He's coming back for her. Thousands of years have passed since humanity vanished, leaving the world to the animals. Then, a single crack appears. The stone shell finally shatters. Taiju bursts out, free from his prison after thousands of years. He stares at the fragments of the shell that held him for so long. He looks out over a forest of stone statues, the only remains of human civilization. He offers a quiet apology to a petrified stranger, wishing he could save them all. Taiju starts running, hoping the old river will lead him back to the tree. Along the way, he finds a familiar face, Tsukasa Shishio, known as the strongest primate high schooler. He pushes through the thick brush and finally finds the giant camphor tree. He stops. He finally found her. Protected by the tree's roots, Yuzuriha Ogawa's stone form is perfectly preserved. Taiju breaks down in tears, thanking the tree for keeping her safe through the ages. He kneels before her, finally ready to finish the confession he started millennia ago. He can't hold back his emotions as he looks at her. She's exactly as he remembers, frozen in time. He tells her he's loved her for thousands of years. His grief turns into determination. He vows to find a way to save her. That's when he spots a message carved into the bark of the tree. It's an instruction to head down the river, and Taiju takes off immediately. He reaches a clearing and finds his friend Senku Ishigami waiting for him. Taiju is so happy he can barely contain himself. He tries to give Senku a hug, but gets a foot to the face for being naked. Senku casually drops the date. October 5th, 5738. He's been awake for over 6 months already. Taiju is baffled that he knows the exact date. Senku explains that he simply counted every single second since the day they were petrified. He kept his brain active for 3,689 years, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Taiju is stunned. He can't wrap his head around being conscious in the dark for that long. Senku tells him it was a scientific necessity to ensure they woke up in the spring. He leads him to his laboratory, explaining that he needs Taiju's strength to help restart civilization. He knew Taiju was too stubborn to stay asleep. After all, a little thing like a few thousand years wasn't going to stop him. Taiju Oki's eyes burn with a new purpose as he commits to the monumental task ahead. High above the forest floor, the primitive laboratory stands as a lone outpost of science in a wild, moonlit world. The duo settles into their roles. Senku Ishigami handles the complex calculations while Taiju takes on the grueling physical labor. Senku's ambition is absolute. He plans to fast-track 2 million years of human evolution and solve the mystery of the global petrification. Fueled by the memory of Yuzuriha Ogawa and the heights of human achievement, they prepare to drag civilization back from the brink. Clad in primitive pelts, but armed with the power of science, Senku Ishigami is ready to restart history. Get excited. Taiju Oki sprints through the woods, lugging a massive haul of food back to camp. Senku Ishigami starts sorting through the pile, tossing the bad stuff into a separate basket. Senku points out the poisonous mushrooms, warning Taiju that some of these Mario lookalikes are actually lethal. They get a fire going and start roasting their edible finds over the flames. One bite, and Taiju loses it. The food is actually good. Senku explains he seasoned it with salt he extracted from the sea. Taiju is ready to give it his all, even if he's not exactly the brain of the operation. The big oaf heads back out to scavenge and stumbles upon some wild grapes. He pops one in his mouth and immediately regrets it. Sour is an understatement. While exploring, he finds a familiar cave, the exact spot where he was petrified for thousands of years. He steps inside and hears the strange sound of liquid dripping in the darkness. There's a handmade ceramic pot sitting right under the drips, collecting a mystery fluid. Taiju realizes he and Senku aren't the only ones who know about this place. Turns out, Senku's the one who set it up. He's been busy while Taiju was out gathering. Senku doesn't plan on just surviving. He's dead set on bringing humanity back to its former glory. They examine the stone fragments from their bodies, noting how the mysterious or has corroded away. It's crazy luck that they both woke up within 6 months of each other after nearly 4 millennia. Senku points out the miraculous liquid dripping from the ceiling. It's nitric acid, made from bat guano. Taiju doesn't really follow the chemistry, and the genius isn't in the mood to explain the boring details. Senku tries pouring the acid directly onto a petrified bird to see if it'll wake up. The acid sizzles against the stone shell, but the bird remains frozen. He's tried this countless times with different variables, and every single one has been a bust. The genius has been recording every failure, filling the walls of his lab with notes and hypotheses. He admits he's hitting a wall without the right equipment to run real experiments. He realizes they need one more ingredient to make the reaction work: alcohol. Senku explains that combining nitric acid with ethanol creates nitol, a powerful corrosive. Taiju's head starts spinning from all the science talk, so he tells his friend to skip the mumbo-jumbo. It clicks for Taiju. Those wild grapes he found earlier are exactly what they need to make wine. The two realize they finally have a solid plan to move forward. Taiju brings in a mountain of grapes, and Senku gives him the green light to get to work. Since his friend has infinite stamina, he takes over the manual labor and starts stomping the life out of those grapes. They keep at it for 3 weeks, letting the juice ferment in their handmade pots. The time finally comes for a taste test of their primeval vintage. It's actual wine. Senku says it's 10 billion times worse than the cheap stuff back home, but it's a start. Now they have to move on to the tedious part, distilling that wine into high-purity brandy. Senku breaks out a primitive ceramic still based on tech people used 5,000 years ago. They start the slow process of heating and condensing the liquid to raise the alcohol content. Months pass as the seasons change, and the forest begins to turn as autumn hits their lap. Soon enough, the camp is buried in snow, but the work doesn't stop for a second. Senku keeps a close eye on the still, waiting for every precious drop of high-purity ethanol. By the time winter starts to fade, Taiju is sporting a full beard and returning with a massive catch. The big guy worries Yuzuriha will hate the caveman look, while the scientist focuses on the final result. After a year of hard labor and science, they've finally got it. The miracle fluid that could wake up the world. Senku Ishigami wipes the sweat from his brow, his mind racing as he prepares for another attempt at the revival formula. They've got rows of pots lined up, each with a different variation of the fluid they're testing on stone birds. Taiju Oki watches anxiously as another test fails, with the stone remaining stubbornly solid. Sizzling and smoking, the liquid reacts with the stone wing, and Senku's eyes widen as he sees the first sign of a real change. He carefully pours the miracle fluid over the entire body of the petrified bird. It works. The stone shell shatters like glass, and a living bird bursts forth for the first time in millennia. Taiju's roar of triumph echoes through the forest as he watches their first successful revival fly away. Exhausted, Senku slumps against a stump, admitting that the science actually worked faster than he'd anticipated. He looks up at the sky with a smirk, ready to take on the impossible with the power of logic. They stand before the petrified form of Yuzuriha Ogawa, and Senku tells his friend that since the grapes were his idea, he gets to choose who they save first. Taiju doesn't hesitate. He's been waiting thousands of years for this exact moment. As they stand in front of her, Senku reflects on a year of grueling effort it took for just 2 high schoolers to get this far. Taiju reaches for the jar, desperate to bring her back, but his friend has a dark warning for him. Senku admits he tried reviving broken stone pieces before, but they only turned into rotting flesh, a reminder that something already dead can't be brought back. Shaking off the morbid thought, Taiju prepares to finally pour the miracle fluid on the girl he loves. He's ready to end her 3,700-year slumber right here and now. But just as the liquid is about to hit the stone, a heavy sound from the brush stops them cold. Senku's eyes dart toward the noise, his internal alarm screaming that something dangerous is close. Taiju suddenly panics for a different reason. He realizes Yuzuriha will be completely naked once the stone falls away. The genius couldn't care less about modesty in a brutal stone world, but Taiju is adamant that they can't revive her like this. In a display of pure brawn, he hoists the entire statue over his head to carry her back to camp first. Another heavy thud echoes through the trees, and Senku tells him to freeze. Something is stalking them through the tall grass, and it definitely isn't friendly. A massive lion emerges from the shadows, its eyes locked onto the 2 strange humans. Taiju is baffled to see a lion in Japan, but Senku explains that the zoo animals escaped and reclaimed the wild. These beasts have spent thousands of years evolving into the undisputed kings of this new world. Without a moment's notice, the predator lunges with its jaws wide open. They bolt into the woods, Taiju barely managing to keep his balance while lugging the heavy statue. The whole pack is on their heels, and Senku realizes they're only being cautious because they've never seen bipedal prey before. Their weapons are too far away at camp, and it's only a matter of time before the lions realize how defenseless they are. One of the cats leaps for a kill, and Taiju throws himself in the way to shield his friend. He's determined to protect the only mind capable of rebuilding civilization, even if it costs him his life. Senku yells at him to stop. Taiju has the strength, but he's never been a fighter in his life. He knows Taiju hasn't thrown a single punch since elementary school, and this isn't the time to start. There's no way out by force, so they have to find a logical alternative before they get torn to shreds. They scramble through the brush, searching for any kind of advantage. They stumble upon a different statue, a massive guy known as Tsukasa Shishio, the strongest primate high schooler. The pack closes in, surrounding them in a tight circle of teeth and claws. With no other choice, Senku tells Taiju to dump the fluid on the giant's head instead. He starts barking out directions, tracking the lions as they prepare for a final pounce. The stone begins to ripple and crack as the formula does its work on the powerful fighter. Tsukasa Shishio explodes out of his stone prison, waking up to a world of immediate danger. Tsukasa Shishio moves with blinding speed, his limbs a blur as he strikes down the lions one by one with a barrage of heavy blows. With a single, bone-shattering punch, the powerful fighter drops the lead predator like it was nothing more than a house cat. As the rest of the pack flees into the brush, Tsukasa turns to his rescuers with a calm, focused gaze, promising that they will never be in danger again. Standing tall in the clearing, he makes his position clear. From this day forward, he will be the one who does the fighting for them. Taiju Oki is ecstatic, believing that their trio of brains, brawn, and fist has finally turned the tide of humanity's survival. But as he watches their new ally, Senku Ishigami can't help but feel a sense of unease, realizing that Tsukasa Shishio might be a little too powerful for his own good. Tsukasa stands over the massive lion he just dropped with a single punch. Taiju is losing his mind in the background. He's never seen anything like it. Senku's already crunching the numbers on this guy. If a man can kill a lion barehanded in this world without guns, he's basically a walking cheat code. If he turns out to be evil, they're totally screwed. Tsukasa doesn't seem bothered at all, just asks for a tool to cut through the meat. Taiju's immediate thought? Dinner. He's wondering if lion is actually on the menu. Senku gives him the breakdown. It's not poisonous, but it tastes like garbage and reeks of ammonia. Apparently, he learned that while studying Ebola in Africa back in the day. Even though he just killed the beast, Tsukasa shows a weird amount of respect for it. He views it as the circle of life and wants to make sure none of the remains go to waste. Taiju is totally sold, thinking Tsukasa is just a legendary guy instead of some tyrant. Senku isn't quite as convinced, but he's not going to argue with free food. Tsukasa drapes the lion skin over his shoulders, looking every bit like the king of this new stone world. The power gap between them and him is pretty obvious. Taiju heads back to Yuzuriha's statue, making a promise to her. He's determined to get more of that miracle fluid and bring her back as soon as possible. It's time for introductions. Tsukasa gives his name, and Senku Ishigami lays out the roles. He's the brains, and Taiju Oki is the weak-minded labor force. Tsukasa naturally steps in as the team's hunter. Tsukasa gets to work immediately, diving into the river and catching a haul of fish with zero effort. He tells them as long as he's around, they'll never have to worry about food again. They set up a smoking rack over the fire. Senku explains that they aren't just grilling. They're using the smoke to kill off bacteria and preserve the meat so they can build up a stockpile. Senku decides it's time for a pop quiz. He asks Taiju what the single most important thing is for rebuilding civilization from scratch. Taiju's best guess? Smartphones. Senku's face says it all. They're millions of years away from that kind of tech. The real answer is calcium carbonate. Senku's got that look in his eye again. He's found the next building block for their survival. To help his friend understand, Senku compares it to the white lime used for lines on sports fields. It's a simple chemical, but it has massive potential. They're going to get it from seashells, just like they did for Taiju's shaving kit earlier. Senku can barely handle how little Taiju knows about basic materials. Taiju doesn't mind the insults as long as he has a job to do. He jumps right into his role as the labor force, ready to smash some shells. He starts pulverizing the shells with a heavy stone. Senku explains that there are 4 critical uses for this powder that will change everything. First up, agriculture. Adding lime to the soil neutralizes the acid, basically leveling up their farming game so they can actually grow crops. Second, mortar. By mixing it with sand and heating it up, they can make a precursor to cement. That means they can finally build real houses and furnaces. The third use is the big one, soap. Senku calls it Dr. Stone because, in a world without medicine, a simple bar of soap is the only thing standing between them and a fatal infection. Tsukasa watches them from a distance, his expression unreadable. He's clearly paying close attention to everything Senku says. He admits he's never met anyone as capable as Senku. Staying that calm and organized right after waking up from thousands of years of sleep earns him Tsukasa's deepest respect. Senku's not exactly flattered. He knows a guy who praises you to your face like that is usually either flirting or plotting something. Taiju, oblivious to the tension, is still waiting for the 4th use. He remembers Senku saying there were 4. Senku plays it off, claiming he only said there were 3. Taiju just shrugs it off, figuring his own memory must be failing him again. Tsukasa gazes out at the ocean, thinking back to his life before the world turned to stone. He remembers walking along the shore as a kid. He feels like the world is finally free now. The sea, the land, and even the shells don't belong to anyone anymore. He starts telling a story about a poor boy from the old world who just wanted to make a shell necklace for his sick sister. But a man with a fishing license caught him and beat the kid senseless, claiming the shells were his property. To Tsukasa, that greedy society was the real poison. Suddenly, Tsukasa brings his spear down, smashing a nearby stone statue to pieces. The head rolls away like a broken rock. Senku is horrified. That wasn't just a rock. That was a human being. Tsukasa doesn't care. He believes those black-hearted adults will just bring back taxes and rent if they're revived. He calls this stone world an undefiled paradise. He wants to purify the human race by only reviving the pure-hearted youth, leaving the rest as stone forever. Senku couldn't disagree more. His goal isn't some twisted utopia. It's to use science to save every single person on Earth, without exception. The realization hits Senku hard. He thought he found an ally, but instead, he's woken up a literal murderer with a god complex. He knows they only survived the lions because of Tsukasa, but an evil dictator would have been 1,000 times better than this. This guy is pure bad news. Senku decides right then that the formula for the miracle fluid is his only trump card. He has to keep a secret from Tsukasa, or he'll lose everything. But Taiju didn't get the memo. He comes sprinting back with a fresh jar of miracle fluid, screaming at the top of his lungs that it's finally time to save Yuzuriha Ogawa. The two ideologies clash in the silence. One wants to purge the world, the other wants to bring it all back. The timer for humanity's future just started ticking faster. Taiju is already at the statue, ready to pour. Senku watches him, knowing their secret is out and there's no going back now. Senku's face completely contorts in a mix of panic and frustration. He can't believe Taiju just blurted it out like that. Regardless of the danger, the plan is in motion. Taiju prepares to pour the fluid on Yuzuriha's stone form, desperate to see her face again after 3,700 years. Back at the camp, things are moving fast. Tsukasa is heading out for another hunt, while Taiju and Senku are focused on the mission to bring back Yuzuriha. Taiju Oki is literally shaking with determination as he holds Yuzuriha's statue. Senku Ishigami is carefully measuring out the miracle fluid, but then he drops some bad news. They don't have enough to revive a single person. Taiju is ready to sprint back to the cave for more, but Senku tells him to hold his horses. Tsukasa Shishio overhears the panic and steps in. He offers to go instead since he's the fastest guy they've got. He just needs one piece of info. Where exactly is this miracle fluid hidden? Senku points him in the right direction, and as Tsukasa leaves, a devious smirk crawls onto his face. He thinks to himself that this was way too easy. He sent Tsukasa on a wild goose chase to protect the source of the fluid. With a single whoosh, Tsukasa is gone. His speed is almost inhuman, disappearing into the woods in a literal flash of movement. Taiju is absolutely floored by how fast the guy is. Senku waits a beat to make sure he's actually gone before letting out a sigh of relief. The bait has been taken. The second Tsukasa is out of sight, Senku's demeanor changes. He's back to being the focused scientist, pulling out the real supply of fluid they need for the revival. He tells Taiju that they have to work at lightning speed. They need to get Yuzuriha Ogawa back and out of there before Tsukasa realizes he's been played and comes back looking for blood. Meanwhile, Tsukasa reaches the cave. He steps inside, noticing the bats swarming above and a strange yellow stain appearing on his skin. He's starting to piece things together. He takes a moment to examine the liquid dripping from the ceiling, even giving a little taste. His eyes sharpen as he realizes the truth. The miracle fluid is actually just nitric acid. He steps out of the cave and finds himself in a graveyard of stone. Everywhere he looks, there are statues of people from the old world, frozen in time. Tsukasa stands among them like a dark omen. To him, this isn't a graveyard. It's a garden that needs weeding. He looks like a reaper ready to start his grim work. Back at the camp, Senku is finishing the prep. He's got that calculated look on his face, knowing he's just started a war with the strongest man on the planet. Taiju is totally confused. He asks Senku why he lied about the fluid. Senku just scoffs. He's a scientist. He doesn't make mistakes like picking the wrong size pot. He needed Tsukasa away from Yuzuriha at all costs. He explains that Tsukasa is completely unmanageable. Taiju still thinks the guy is a hero, but Senku knows better. He has zero interest in living in a world built on Tsukasa's violent ideals. Taiju doesn't quite get all the science, but he trusts Senku with his life. If his buddy says Tsukasa is dangerous, then that's good enough for him. While they pour the fluid over Yuzuriha, we see Tsukasa in action elsewhere. He's smashing adult statues without a second thought. Senku calls him exactly what he is, a good guy who just happens to be a cold-blooded murderer. They wait by the statue, but nothing happens immediately. Taiju starts to panic, thinking it failed, but Senku tells him to shut up and wait. Science doesn't happen in a heartbeat. He breaks down the theory. A mystery element preserved their bodies, creating a protective layer of trace metals. It's basically high-tech cold sleep that's lasted for thousands of years. Then they hear it, the sound of stone cracking. The nitric acid is finally doing its job, triggering a chain reaction that ripples through the stone shell. Yuzuriha's face starts to crumble away, revealing the skin underneath. The petrification is finally being undone. Taiju's eyes are wide, his heart probably pounding out of his chest. In that moment, a flicker of memory returns. A vision of Yuzuriha back in the old world, gentle and kind as she tended to a bird. Taiju remembers his own vow from 3,700 years ago. He refused to let his mind die, clinging to life just so he could finally finish that confession he started before the light hit. Images of the world's end flash by. The crumbling bridges and the billions lost to time. Through all that darkness, Taiju managed to stay awake because Yuzuriha was there with him. He lets out a roar that echoes through the forest. I've loved you for hundreds and thousands of years. As he shouts, the last of the stone on Yuzuriha's face shatters. The shell falls away completely, and Yuzuriha collapses into Taiju's arms. She's finally back, and Senku just watches from the side, looking satisfied with his work. She slowly opens her eyes and sees the crying face of the boy who waited millennia for her. Taiju, she whispers, and Taiju can barely speak through his tears as he apologizes for the wait. Yuzuriha looks up at him with those same kind eyes. She realizes what happened and gives him a soft thank you for saving her. But the moment is short-lived. Senku cuts the reunion short, telling them they need to move. He spent a whole year perfecting this fluid, and they don't have a second to waste. He lays out Plan A. Taiju and Yuzuriha should take off right now. They should run far away and live their lives in peace, far from the conflict brewing here. Then there's Plan B. They stay and fight. They use the tools of civilization to stop a murderer like Tsukasa before he can destroy any more lives. He looks them both in the eye and gives them the choice. They either run for their lives right now, or they stand their ground and face the strongest primate on Earth together. Taiju doesn't even have to think about it. His face says everything. The answer is 100% obvious. He's not going anywhere. Yuzuriha is right there with him. She might not know exactly what's going on, but she's ready to help. Senku is glad to see the old couple is still in sync. Meanwhile, Tsukasa is still among the statues. To him, breaking them isn't murder. It's just a matter of perspective. He's not killing people. He's cleaning up a mess. He stares at a piece of stone in his hand, his eyes cold. He believes he's thinning the herd to make room for a better, purer world. He begins his walk back to the camp, his presence looming over the forest. Every step he takes brings him closer to the confrontation he knows is coming. When he arrives, Senka notices immediately that he's stopped pretending. Tsukasa is making no effort to hide his murderous intent anymore. Taiju steps forward, shielding Yuzuriha. He tells Senku to take care of her if things go south, because he's determined to be the one to stop Tsukasa. Without a weapon, Taiju lunges forward. It's a brave move, but incredibly reckless given who he's up against. Senku is panicking in the background, calling Taiju a pea-brain for going barehanded against a lion killer. He realizes he has no choice but to use his secret weapon, a handmade crossbow. He pulls the trigger, sending a bolt flying towards Tsukasa. But in a display of impossible skill, Tsukasa reaches out and catches the arrow mid-air with his bare hand. Taiju Oki charges in, his face contorted with effort, but he's hopelessly outclassed. With a sound like a whip crack, Tsukasa Shishio launches a roundhouse kick so fast it's almost a blur. The sheer force of the swing creates a vacuum that nearly pulls Taiju off his feet before the impact even lands. The kick connects with a bone-jarring thud, sending Taiju skidding back across the dirt. Yet to Tsukasa's absolute shock, the big guy doesn't go down. He stands there, reeling but still upright, taking the full brunt of a blow that would have killed a normal person. Tsukasa realizes that Taiju wasn't just unable to hit back. He deliberately chose not to, a display of pacifism and sheer physical grit that leaves the world's strongest teenager genuinely stunned. Taiju makes a crazy offer. Tsukasa can beat him up as much as he wants as long as he stops destroying the stone statues. He's dead serious about it, too. Killing people is wrong, and he's willing to be a human punching bag to prevent more murders. Tsukasa is genuinely thrown off. He can't wrap his head around why someone would just offer themselves up like that. He thinks the deal is nonsense. Why would Taiju let himself get hit instead of just attacking? Senku and Yuzuriha can only watch in horror. They know Tsukasa isn't the type to just play along with a fair deal. Tsukasa shifts the pressure. He realizes Taiju won't fight back for himself, so he threatens to kill Yuzuriha instead to see what they'll do. The tension is through the roof. Senku and Yuzuriha are frozen, realizing they've basically become hostages in this guy's twisted game. Taiju takes a brutal hit and collapses, his face a bloody mess. Yuzuriha rushes to him, terrified as he finally stops moving. Tsukasa decides he's done for the day. He tells them there's no need for friends to fight and suggests Taiju focus on protecting Yuzuriha. With that, the strongest high schooler just turns and walks away into the woods, leaving them in the dirt. Senko looks at his broken crossbow. He fired that thing at over 200 kilometers per hour, and the guy just snatched the arrow out of the air like it was nothing. He tells Yuzuriha there's only one way to stop a monster like that. They have to jumpstart civilization and turn the clock forward. They look out over the vast, primitive landscape from their treehouse. To beat Tsukasa, they need a major upgrade. Senko points a finger, laying out the plan. They're going after humanity's greatest invention, firearms. He breaks it down. It took humans 2 million years to move past stone tools, but gunpowder came around way more recently. Against a murderous fiend who can kill lions barehanded, gunpowder is their only shot. Even Taiju, battered as he is, gets fired up for the mission. Before they leave, Senku starts wrecking their camp. He wants it to look like they just grabbed some food and bolted in a panic. It's officially a race now. If they find the materials for gunpowder first, they win. If Tsukasa catches on, they're dead. They set off for Hakone, which is about 80 kilometers away. That's 2 full marathons through a wild, overgrown world. Senku pulls out a makeshift sextant to keep them on track. He's relying on pure science to navigate this new map. Taiju is blown away that Senku can track their position just by counting the time since the sun rose. Yuzuriha suggests looking for a landmark in Kamakura, but everything modern has crumbled into dust over the last few thousand years. Suddenly, they hit a patch of dead ground. Senku checks his coordinates, 35.19 degrees north, 139.32 degrees east. He knows exactly where they are. Emerging from the trees, they find the great Buddha of Kamakura. It's still there, sitting peacefully among the ruins. Seeing the familiar statue finally makes the reality of their situation sink in for Yuzuriha. Taiju sees her tears and immediately panics, ready to hunt down whoever made her cry. She explains it's not that. She only woke up today, and it hasn't really hit her how much time has passed until this moment. Seeing the Buddha confirms it. It's been thousands of years, and everyone she ever knew is gone. Senku keeps it cool, telling her not to worry. They're going to take down Tsukasa and save every last person on the planet. Taiju is just happy the Buddha is still standing. He thanks it for watching over the world for all those centuries. Senku can't help but drop some knowledge. The statue survived because it's made of bronze, which is super resistant to corrosion. They notice the ground around the statue is completely bare, with no plants growing at all. Senku explains that copper ions from the bronze seeped into the soil, making it toxic for any vegetation. He's actually thrilled about it, too. He wants to use the bronze to make a mirror and sharpen the accuracy of his sextant. They pass some cherry blossoms, but Senku notes they're different. The ones people loved in their time went extinct because they couldn't self-pollinate. They take a break to fuel up on some fish. Taiju is eating like he's never seen food before. As the sun sets, Senku tells the big guy to get some sleep. Even a powerhouse like him needs to rest if they're going to survive this trek. They keep moving, trekking through rivers as they push closer to their goal. Taiju is struggling to even keep his head above water, though he insists he's got plenty of energy left in the tank. Yuzuriha is limping, and Taiju finally notices she's still got stones stuck to her toes. She didn't want to slow them down. Senku pours some fluid on her feet to help. He explains that they all took some damage when they unpetrified, leaving those cracks and leftover stone. He promises once they reach Hakone, they can soak in some hot springs. But back at their old camp, Tsukasa has already found their trail. Tsukasa isn't buying the act. Looking at the jumbled footprints, he knows Senku isn't the type to just run away with his tail between his legs. He figures it out pretty quickly. They're heading west to create a scientific weapon to fight him. But the question is, where exactly? Meanwhile, the trio has reached their destination, the Hakone Hot Springs. It's a huge win, especially for their first real bath in 3,700 years. But it's not just for the spa treatment. Japan is a volcanic nation, which means an endless supply of sulfur, the key raw ingredient for gunpowder. Tsukasa is already on the move, though. He knows if they manage to manufacture gunpowder, he'll be completely at their mercy. Senku is already getting to work. This is the rebirth of black powder, and he's ready for the showdown. While they work, Taiju tries to help out with some pottery, but he's realizing he might be better at breaking things than making them. Senku gives him a quick lesson on the coil method, since Taiju is a bit too clumsy for a potter's wheel. He gets into it, squishing the clay and thinking about making something special for Yuzuriha. They spend the night baking the creations in a kiln. Now, they just have to wait and see how they turn out. Taiju is hyped to see his first masterpiece, but Senku looks like he's having second thoughts about letting him help. It turns out his masterpiece looks exactly like a giant pile of poop. Senku tells him to grow up and learn to dry the clay properly next time. Back at the springs, Senku starts catching Yuzuriha up on everything she missed while she was a statue. Taiju is thinking back to those thousands of years he spent trapped in stone, clinging to the conversation he never got to finish with her. He's got her right there on the other side of the bamboo wall, and he's finally ready to say what he's wanted to say for ages. It's a heavy moment. He's been thinking about nothing but this for centuries. But he catches himself. Confessing his feelings now, while they're just trying to survive, feels like a coward's move. He tells her he'll wait. Once they've brought back civilization and saved everyone, then he'll finish that 3,700-year-old conversation. For now, the mission is what matters. They've got a massive target on their backs thanks to the strongest primate high schooler, Tsukasa Shishio. Tsukasa is out there right now, smashing statues and ending lives. They have to put a stop to it, and the only way is to fight back. Welcome to Senku's gunpowder cooking class. They've finally gathered the 3 ingredients they need to change the game. Ingredient 1 is the sulfur from the hot springs, and ingredient 2 is charcoal, which they can get by burning wood from the forest. The third and hardest ingredient is potassium nitrate. Senku's been prepping some in anticipation, so they're actually ready to go. Taiju realizes it's the same stuff from the cave. He's definitely getting smarter, earning 100 billion points from the genius himself. The recipe is precise: 75% potassium nitrate, 10% sulfur, 15% charcoal, and a tiny bit of sugar for some extra oomph. Now for the finishing touch. Senku tells Taiju to use his insane strength to smash the mixture together and harden it up. Yuzuriha is worried about a spark setting it off, but Senku assures her that rocks hitting rocks won't cause a fire. Usually. The only way they get a spark is if there's iron in the mix, like pyrite. And in a volcanic area, that's actually a pretty big risk. Taiju doesn't hesitate. He slams the boulder down with everything he's got. The result is a massive explosion that sends them all flying. It's a total success, but that smoke cloud is basically a giant beacon. They're all singed and smoking, but Senku is thrilled. The gunpowder cooking was a complete success. Yuzuriha is staring at the crater, totally blown away by the power. She's starting to realize why Tsukasa is so afraid of science. Senku explains that while it's a lethal weapon, he doesn't want to use it to kill. He wants to use it as leverage to make a deal. He knows there's no reasoning with a murderer like Tsukasa, but having gunpowder puts them in a way better bargaining position. If the talks break down, though, things are going to get ugly. Tsukasa is already closing in, and Senku's gaze turns cold. If it comes down to it, he's prepared to do whatever it takes to survive. It's kill or be killed. The tension between the two is already reaching a breaking point. They hurry to put out the fire from the blast. If Tsukasa is already on his way, this smoke is a dead giveaway. Suddenly, Yuzuriha spots something that stops them in their tracks. Far off in the distance, another column of smoke is rising into the sky. It's not a forest fire or a volcano. It's a direct response to their own explosion. There are actually other people out there in this stone world. Now, they have a choice. Do they play it safe and hide, or do they light the fire back up and gamble on the future? Senku doesn't hesitate for long. He screams for them to light it up and raise the smoke signal, choosing the hope of finding allies over the safety of staying hidden. It's a massive gamble, but for the future of humanity, it's one he's willing to take. They're stoking the fire, desperate to send a signal to anyone else left in this stone world. Senku knows it's a double-edged sword. It could bring help, but it definitely alerts their enemy. And Tsukasa's already figured it out. He knows Senku is after gunpowder. He realizes those seashells weren't just for cleaning. They're a key ingredient for mass-producing nitric acid. Looking at the smoke, Tsukasa sees it as a direct threat. Senku was planning to oppose him from the start. Yuzuriha keeps gathering wood, unaware the situation is about to spiral. Tsukasa makes his move, grabbing Yuzuriha and holding a stone blade to her neck. He waits for Senku to make a choice. The fire rages between them as the tension peaks. Tsukasa rants about how science just brings back the old world's hierarchy of power. To him, weapons only lead to people fighting out of self-interest, dragging humanity back to its sordid past. He's fine with ruling by force if it prevents that cycle. Senku just gives him a smug look. Tsukasa cuts to the chase. He wants the revival fluid recipe right now. Senku tries to play it off like a cold scientist, claiming he couldn't care less about the girl. Yuzuriha's heart pounds against her chest as she listens to him dismiss her life. But Tsukasa isn't buying the act. If Senku really didn't care, he would have just hidden her petrified body and moved on. He knows Senku is a liar when it comes to his friends. He's far more sentimental than he lets on. Tsukasa looks back on his own past. Famous, successful, but never having someone he truly cared about. He smiles, certain he's got Senka backed into a corner. He slices through Yuzuriha's long hair. She doesn't even flinch, saying short hair is better for survival anyway. She begs Senku not to say a word. As long as he keeps the secret, Tsukasa has to keep him alive. She's willing to die if it means Senku can continue the fight for humanity. Senku's face contorts. The logical choice is failing him. He finally breaks and spills the recipe. Nitric acid and 96% distilled alcohol, mixed in a 3:7 ratio. Tsukasa give a polite thanks. He's got exactly what he wanted. And with that, he admits there's no longer any reason to let the scientist live. Just then, 3 smoke signals rise from the forest. Taiju is ecstatic, thinking they found other survivors. Senku watches the smoke, his expression unreadable as the end nears. Deep in the trees, a mysterious silhouette watches the signals rise. Tsukasa offers one last out. He'll spare Senku if he promises to give up on science forever. Senku doesn't even have to think about it. He's not going to stop, not even to save his own life. Tsukasa realizes there's no middle ground here. Taiju sprints toward the cliff, completely unaware of the execution that's about to happen. We flash back 3,700 years. Even as a first grader, Senku was already telling everyone he was going to space. His teacher tells him it's a wonderful dream to pursue once he's all grown up. But Senku wasn't interested in waiting. He was already drowning himself in books about NASA and robotics. His father, Byakuya, watched from the hallway, seeing a kid who was ready to start from square one. Byakuya even sold his car just to buy his son the research equipment he needed. He handed over the gear, telling Senku that there's nothing diligence and science can't accomplish. Senku's room transformed into a full-blown laboratory, packed with every tool he could get his hands on. He was determined to turn those dreams into reality, no matter how much work it took. From simple magnifying glass experiments to thermite reactions that melted through his mother's pans. He even roped Taiju into building rockets, failing time after time, but always coming back for more. Senku's obsession with science only grew. He wasn't just reading books. He was building massive gadgets before he even hit middle school. He spent his childhood explaining advanced engineering concepts to a very confused Taiju. Ablative material was just another day at the office for him. He'd hit up electronic stores with lists of high-end tech, like Raspberry Pis and gyroscopes, buying out the stock for his latest project. While other kids were playing tag, Senku was on rooftops soldering antennas to capture data from his launches. Taiju was always the muscle, helping load cargo. He even roped Yuzuriha from the arts club into making little stuffed mascots for their maiden voyage. They packed the little dolls into the Senku 3 and got ready to push the big red button. The rocket took off with a roar, a massive streak of fire and smoke cutting through the city skyline. It reached the edge of space, capturing a shot of their little mascot dolls floating high above the earth. It blew up, but for Senku, the data was a perfect success. Back in the present, Senku hasn't changed a bit. His goal is still the stars, and he's not letting anyone stop him. Tsukasa stares him down across the clearing, the smoke from the signal still rising between them. He gives Senku one last chance to save himself. All he has to do is swear, right here and now, to give up on science forever. But for Senku, that's the one thing he could never do. Rebuilding civilization isn't just a goal, it's who he is. Tsukasa closes his eyes, almost looking regretful. He knew exactly what the answer would be. Senku knows the score. He tells Tsukasa that even if he lied, they were destined to kill each other eventually. Tsukasa strikes with a crack, hitting the cervical plexus in Senku's neck. He promises to make it quick and painless. As Senku begins to fall, Tsukasa admits that if they had only met 3,700 years earlier, things might have been different. Fragments of memory flash through their minds. The day the world turned to stone and the lives that were lost in an instant. A final KRAK echoes across the mountain as Senku's body hits the ground. Tsukasa realizes that Senku might have been the only person he could truly call a friend. Taiju crests the hill just in time to see his best friend collapse, his world shattering in a single moment. Memories of their childhood flood back. The simple days of collecting shells and running through the park. They were a team from the start, building dreams together while the rest of the world just watched. The little mascots from their first rocket launch come to mind. To Tsukasa, this was a loss he never wanted. Taiju collapses over Senku's body, his grief turning into a primal scream that echoes through the trees. Yuzuriha can only watch and weep. Tsukasa remains cold. He calculates the risk, knowing that if Taiju lets his rage take over, he'll have to put him down too. Instead of charging, Taiju hoists a massive boulder over his head. He tells Yuzuriha to keep her cool, even as he looks ready to snap. Tsukasa readies himself. He's faced lions and legends, but a grief-stricken giant is a whole different beast. Yuzuriha looks up at Taiju, realizing he's not just acting on instinct. He's got a plan. Through her tears, Yuzuriha remembers the promise they all made. She knows what needs to happen next. Taiju grips the stone tight, his muscles bulging as he prepares for one final, desperate move. With a roar that shakes the ground, Taiju launches the massive rock high into the air. Tsukasa is caught off guard. He watches the stone's arc, wondering why Taiju would throw his only weapon straight up instead of at him. He realizes too late that he made a single, fatal miscalculation. He took his eyes off Yuzuriha, assuming she was just a helpless bystander. But in this world, knowledge is the most dangerous weapon of all, and she's ready to ignite Senku's black powder. Science is the great equalizer. That's the mindset that started this whole thing. Yuzuriha lunges for the pot, while Tsukasa closes the distance. A heavy foot slams down next to the scattered petrified remains. The pot shatters and releases a thick cloud of black powder, catching Tsukasa completely off guard. This was Senku's hidden ace, a parting gift of gunpowder for this exact moment. Back when they were planning, the goal was always to stand their ground together. A childhood promise between three best friends. They combined their skills to fight anyone who stood in their way. Taiju puts his strength to use and chucks a massive boulder straight at the high schooler. The black powder catches fire and rips through the cliffside in a massive explosion. A pillar of smoke towers over the trees, visible for miles around. Tsukasa stands right in the middle of the clearing, watching the smoke clear without a scratch. He realizes they used the blast as a screen to split up and make a run for it. Taiju carries Senku's limp body through the brush, with Yuzuriha following right behind. "Goodbye, Tsukasa," Taiju yells back, his voice thick with grief. They dive deep into the forest, desperate to get away from the monster behind them. Taiju refuses to accept the obvious. He knows Senku isn't the type to just give up halfway. Tsukasa is certain he snapped the guy's neck, but Taiju is already starting desperate chest compressions. He moves on to mouth, ignoring Yuzuriha's warnings about moving his neck too much. Every second counts, but Senku isn't showing any signs of life. Taiju's mind flashes back to a psychology test they took back in school. While the other kids were picking one person to save, Senku's answer was different. He'd find a way to save everyone. There's no way Senku just sacrificed himself. He had to have left a hint for them to find. Taiju remembers how Senku kept cracking his neck right before the final blow. He wasn't just acting tough. He was pointing exactly where Tsukasa should hit. It wasn't just a nervous habit. It was a calculated move. Taiju and Yuzuriha check the back of his neck, hoping they're right. Sure enough, there's a tiny fragment of stone still stuck right where the strike landed. They remember that the unpetrification process heals the body as the stone sheds away. Yuzuriha hands over the last of the miracle fluid they have. Taiju pours the liquid directly onto the stone fragment on Senku's neck. "Wake up!" he screams, watching as the stone finally starts to crack. This is their only shot, the shining star of hope that science provides. Taiju begs his friend to open his eyes while the last of the stone crumbles away. Rain starts to pour over the quiet forest. Deep in a hidden cave, the miracle fluid drips steadily into a small pool. For 3,700 years, Senku stayed awake in the dark, counting every single second. After over 100 billion seconds, his stone shell finally begins to split. It's time to go back to the moment it all really started. A single eye opens within the fractured stone casing. With a final push, Senku Ishigami breaks free from his multi-millennial prison. He stands alone in a world reclaimed by nature, knowing Taiju would eventually do the same. Naked and surrounded by mushrooms, he begins his mission to solve the mystery of the stone. He examines the spot where he woke up, looking at the stone shell pieces. He knows he needs to keep these fragments for later study. Some monkeys in the trees are watching him, completely baffled by this weird newcomer. To them, he's just a smooth and shiny monkey with zero fur. They've never seen a human before, and they're not impressed by his lack of coverage. He looks at the petrified birds around him and realizes that the modern world is truly dead and buried. It's the official start of the stone world, and despite being alone, Senku is hyped to get to work. He stands on the edge of a cliff, taking in the scale of the task ahead of him. After counting for over 100 billion seconds, he does the math to figure out exactly how long he was out. April 1st, 5738 AD. He marks the date on a rock and declares it year zero. Rebuilding everything starts with one thing: fire. He works the drill until his hands are raw, but the wood stays cold. The local monkeys think he's a total idiot for scratching away at a log all day. He quickly realizes that the humidity in Japan makes this a nightmare without Taiju's muscle or Yuzuri's skills. He's got no claws or fangs, just his brain and a whole lot of patience. He heads to the river to find the right materials to start his technological climb. He starts banging rocks together, trying to flake off sharp edges for tools. The monkeys keep watching, laughing at the shiny monkey and his weird habits. He experiments with different striking techniques, refusing to stop until he gets it right. He identifies a piece of chert, a stone so hard it's perfect for making a blade. It takes hours of research-backed grinding and polishing. Success! This smooth monkey has officially entered the Stone Age with his first set of tools. He uses his new knife to strip long fibers from vines, using what he calls the string cheese method. The monkeys still have no clue why he's fidgeting with plants. By twisting those fibers, he crafts a length of sturdy rope. With the rope, he builds a better fire drill that spins way faster than his hands ever could. A massive flame erupts. He's officially mastered fire. Now that he can cook, he sets his sights on some actual food and bags himself a deer. He sets to work skinning the animal, seeing himself as the world's most advanced predator. He overcomes the harsh reality of nature through sheer creativity. Finally, a hot meal. He's gone from a naked castaway to a self-proclaimed overlord of science. He turns to his furry audience and formally introduces himself. He stitches together the hides to create some basic protection from the elements. Clad in his new gear, Senku stands ready to take back the planet. "I'm a human,"